For the past few months, I've been looking to fill in the void that I have in my heart ever since I've completed all of the Yakuza and Like a Dragon games. Since I've devoted myself to JRPGs a lot these past few years, and since I've already 100% completed Final Fantasy XIII and 13-2, I thought that it would be a good idea to try to complete all of the single-player Final Fantasy games. I also want to make this into a challenge where I try to beat them all within 2025. Before starting this challenge for Final Fantasy I, let's just take a quick look at all of the achievements for this game. The Final Fantasy I achievements seem to be straightforward enough. We just simply have to defeat every enemy in the game and open every chest. I also looked at the guide and it turns out that there aren't any missable achievements at all, since all the areas in this game can be revisited at any time. I won't be giving a full story analysis for the series, but I will be briefly covering what is going on in the story. Not that this original Final Fantasy has much of a story anyway, but without anything else to say, let's just begin the run. There are 6 classes in the game, but you can only choose a party of 4. We aren't able to change the classes once we start the playthrough, so we are locked in with our choice. But I don't really think it matters too much. Without doing much thinking, I just went with the Warrior, Thief, Black Mage, and Red Mage build. The Warrior Thief would be my physical attackers, with the Black Mage focusing on the offensive spells. The Red Mage is a mix of a Black and White Mage, so they have both offensive and defensive and healing spells. I named the Warrior after myself, along with my 3 companions, like, comment, and subscribe, which should remind you to do something with this video. Anyway, we get isekai'd into another world, where we find out that we are the 4 chosen heroes, but we have to prove ourselves to this king, so we go to the Chaos Shrine to rescue the princess. On our way to the Chaos Shrine, there are a few things that caught me off guard when starting out this challenge. First of all, it turns out that the inn doesn't revive your team. Instead, you have to find an unmarked buildings in each of the towns, and pay extra money to get your team member revived, where they are only put at 1 health as well. We also had to buy some gear in the town. In my first battle, my mages didn't have any magic spells, so they were basically useless. But after a few of these growing pains, I was able to make it to the Chaos Shrine successfully. I took my time exploring the shrine, but with a lot of the doors being locked, saying that I need a mystic key to open the doors. With nothing much else to do in here for now, I found a princess and brought her back to the kingdom. I thought that I would get my first achievement there, but it turns out you get it once you pass a bridge that she commanded her troops to build. As we get out of Tutorial Island, we run into new monsters in the Overworld, where after defeating them, we get the basic field research achievement for filling out 10% of the bestiary. We also get achievements for filling out 50% and 100% later on in the playthrough, meaning that we will have to fight every single enemy in the game. The bestiary also includes boss fights. Exploring the available lands, I found this cave base, where a witch says she needs a crystal and that she can't see. Since we can't help her out yet, I just left and made my way to the next town, where I upgraded my gear and fought some pirates. After destroying these pirates in battle, we take their boat and we can sail across the ocean to our next destination. While inside the boat, if you hold the A button and tap the B button a few times, this minigame will pop up. I tried beating it for a few minutes, but I gave up as I was slightly hungover from New Year's, and I ended up getting an achievement just for playing the game. You don't even have to complete the minigame. We arrive at the port of Elfheim, where another king sends us to the Marsh Caves to get his crown back. The Marsh Caves is the first dungeon of this game, spanning across 4 different floors. There are a lot of enemies in here that inflict poison, and I found out the hard way that the inn also doesn't clear poison either, but that you have to stock up on antidotes to make it through this dungeon. I've defeated enough enemies in this cave to get the Apprentice Warrior achievement for defeating 100 total enemies, and the Thrifty Spender achievement, which you get by making a 10,000 gil, rather than actually spending it, but hey, it is what it is. There are plenty of chests in this dungeon to open as well, although many of them were booby-trapped with monsters, including the boss for this area, the Side Code Mons. I wouldn't personally count them as a boss, but we do get the crown for defeating them, so I guess it does count. Before heading back to Elfheim to give the crown back, we go north of the Marsh Caves and arrive at the Western Keep, where we fight another quote-unquote boss, and we get the crystal ball for defeating it. For giving the crown back at Elfheim, we get the Mystic Key, meaning that we can open the locked doors from the Chaos Shrine, along with the few locked doors inside the Marsh Cave. And by going back to the cave with the witch, we get dissed for our looks, and we also get the Jolt Tonic, which will wake up the Prince of Elfheim from his coma. I forgot to mention the Prince, didn't I? That just shows how relevant he is. Going back to some of the previously locked chests, I get the Rookie Treasure Hunter achievement for opening 10% of the total chests in the game. I also went back to the Tutorial Island and Cornelia, where there was a locked door with a few chests as well, one of them containing nitro powder. This fetch quest saga isn't over yet. We have to bring this nitro powder to the dwarves' cave, where one of the dwarves then causes an earthquake, destroying the landscape so hard to the point where our ship can pass through, which will let us get into the Cavern of Earth. But we can't even finish this dungeon as we run into another mini-boss along the way, where it drops the Star of Ruby. To progress further into the Earth Cavern, we have to take the Star of Ruby to the Giant's Cave, where then the Giant lets us pass through and reach the Sage Cave, where we get the Earth Rod, which will let us finally reach the end of this fetch quest. Throughout this journey, I've got the Smart Saver achievement for saving up 50,000 Jill, and I also got the Apprentice Warrior achievement for defeating 300 total enemies. This massive fetch quest ends when we reach the Cavern Earth for the second time. We can finally go beyond the 3rd floor, where we will eventually face the first of the 4 big bad bosses, the Fiend of Earth, Lich. I wasn't able to beat it in my first attempt, as my spells didn't really do that much damage, but I did notice that it had a weakness to fire attacks, so I bought extra spells for the black and red mages. The status effect moves like Slow Roll didn't work, so I just ended up spamming the fire and melee attacks until I won. For beating Lich, we get the Earth's Blessing achievement. We make our way to Crescent Town, where we get access to better weapons and spells. But more importantly, if we make our way into the forest, we get to meet the 12 sages. And after speaking with all of them, we are given a canoe, which lets us get into rivers stuck between mountains, where the boat is too big to fit into. Rowing between the rivers, we eventually end up in Mount Gulf, where a second fiend lies. This is the most unique dungeon yet in this game. We can choose to walk on the rocks or on the lava, with both of them having different trade-offs. By walking on lava, we don't run into any enemies, but we lose health for each step we take. Now this is a really cool gimmick in my opinion, especially considering when this game originally came out, but in the Pixel remasters, we can just disable the encounters whenever we want to, so taking the damage just kind of got annoying at some point. But even with encounters turned off, there are still enemies to fight. We have the booby-trapped chests to open, along with a few hooded monsters blocking the door. We got the money bag achievement for saving up 100,000 gil total. In a similar case to the Earth Fiend, I had trouble defeating Marlith, the Fire Fiend at first, but by going back and buying new spells it became quite easy. Funnily enough, the Fire Fiend wasn't weak to ice or water attacks, but instead was weak to electric. We got the Rekindled Flame achievement for winning this boss fight. Straight away we head to the Ice Cavern, where it has a similar gimmick to Mount Gulg, but instead of walking on lava, we walk on ice spikes. This dungeon is much shorter compared to Gulg, since it only has 3 floors to walk through instead of the 5 previously. At the end of the Ice Cavern, we don't run into a fiend, but instead we run into Evil Eye mini-boss, which drops the Levi Stone after dying in 2 hits. We bring the Levi Stone to a small desert just south of Crescent Lake, and for some reason an airship just appears. This airship lets us fly around the rest of the world, where I made my first stop at the city of Gaia, which is stuck in between the mountains. I bought some new spells and gear before flying further away, making my way to the Citadel of Trials. During the trials, I unlocked the Advanced Field Researcher achievement for filling out 50% of the bestiary, along with the Veteran Treasure Hunter for opening 50% of all the chests in-game. The final chest in the trials had a rat's tail, where we can then exchange it with the dragons to upgrade our class. With our upgraded classes, we also unlocked the Token of Courage achievement. Now, we only have the top left area of this world to explore. I found a suitable place to land and start walking towards Onrak. As usual, I bought some gears and spells over there, and I did some further exploring outside of this town. I stumbled my way around the small desert close by, where I eventually found a desert caravan by chance. When I was there, I bought the Bottled Fairy quest item for 50,000 Jill, and by releasing the fairy back to the wild at Gaia, they thank us and give us an oxale, which will let us breathe underwater, and therefore we get access to the sunken shrine, where Kraken, the Fiend of Water, is. Inside the shrine, I get the Legendary Warrior achievement for defeating 500 total enemies. I also make sure to loot all the chests inside, since one of them contains the Rosetta Stone. This stone was cleverly hidden, as there is no direct path to the home where it is, where instead you have to actually walk towards the top left of this map, and it will loop you around towards the right side. I actually had to go back to the shrine to specifically pick up this item for the main story, so make sure to get it as soon as possible if you're following along. I was slightly overleveled at this point, so the Kraken fight was very straightforward. I just spammed electric attacks and healing whenever I was low enough. We got the Revitalized Water achievement for winning. Outside Onrak, there is a small waterfall that can only be accessed with a canoe, and surprisingly, there is a small dungeon hidden behind it. At the end of this waterfall dungeon, we talk to a robot, and it decides to give us a warp cube. To get the third and final item needed for the 4th and last fiend of the game, we have to reach Lufenia, the final town left in the game. Over there, we just talk to a few NPCs, where one of them eventually gives us a bell. With the Warp Cube, Rosetta Stone, and Bell, we can now tackle the Mirage Tower, which is located in the Great Desert. The Tower of Mirage is a short dungeon, again with only having 3 floors, but by getting to the end, we get access to the Flying Fortress, where the Fiend actually resides. With the Flying Fortress being the last unexplored area left in the game, I got the Adventurous Way for an achievement. This is a large dungeon with 5 floors, and with lots of loot and new enemies to fight. The most important piece of loot to collect is the Adamantite, which is used to craft the Excalibur sword, the second strongest weapon in the game. I wasn't able to beat the Fiend of Wind on my first try, so I left the dungeon early and headed to the Dwarf Caves, where I extended the Adamantite for my sword, getting the Sword of Myth achievement. With Excalibur, this boss was a lot easier. I also discovered a Temper spell, which boosts your attack stats significantly during the battle. Since it was a spell early on in the game, and I wasn't really struggling too much, I just kind of ignored it up until this point. If I knew about the spell earlier, maybe I wouldn't have had to stock up on much more powerful spells for the earlier bosses. We get the Wind's Caress achievement, and at this point we are only left with the final boss in the game, which is located back at the Chaos Shrine, the same place where we rescued the princess. But before tackling the final dungeon, I went out of my way to collect any remaining chests that I haven't gotten up to this point. Thankfully, this was quite easy to do, as the overworld map shows you how many chests there are in a specific area, and how many you have opened. Within 10 minutes, I was able to get any remaining chests outside of the Chaos Shrine. Using the loot given to us by the princess at the beginning of the game, we are teleported 2,000 years into the past, where we are then forced to take on all 4 fiends once more, before fighting the final boss of the game. This dungeon was a little bit confusing to travel around at first, but thanks to the minimap, I could locate where the endings were very easily. In between all the fiends, there were a few chests off of the beaten path. I accidentally missed a few on the second floor, since I was in a rush just to finish this game at this point. The 4 fiends were fairly easy to get through. It was just the same as the boss fights before, but they just had more health and slightly stronger attacks. At level 38, I challenged the final boss for the first time, and I was very underleveled. I just kept getting swept out within the first few turns at each attempt. Since I was close at the end of the game, I just went into the boosts menu and I changed the XP rate to 4 times regular, just to speed up the leveling process a little bit. I also used this as an opportunity to gather any remaining bestiary entries. Looking back at it now, I wish I'd chosen the White Mage just for this final boss alone, as the Red Mage couldn't heal multiple party members at once. I had to dedicate the Thief to being a potion spammer, and unfortunately the potions only healed 150 HP. While grinding, I opened a few final chests I missed inside the Chaos Shrine to get the legendary Treasure Hunter achievement. And while grinding, I got the Seasoned Hero achievement for reaching level 50 on all of the characters. The final enemy not registered in a bestiary, besides the final boss itself, is the War Mech, a powerful and rare enemy that can only be found in the Air Fortress. It has a nuke attack that can wipe out your entire party in one hit if you are low leveled enough. But since it's such a rare enemy, I just kept grinding my levels until I finally ran into it. But at that point, I was so high level to the point where the nuke didn't really do that much damage, and I was able to beat it without any problems. Now, at level 65, I only have the final boss left in the game, and the boss was fairly easy now at this point. The boss's attacks were doing less damage compared to what the potions were healing. I also equipped the ribbon defense items, which doubled the defense against magic attacks, making this fight that much easier. I only had 3 ribbons though, so the thief had to make do without it. At the start of the battle, I would spam Temper on the warrior to get his attack stats up, while using the Red Mage to cast defense and evasion spells. With a few attempts and a bit of luck, I was able to beat the final boss and I got the Prophecy Foretold achievement. But I didn't get the final 2 achievements. It turns out that the completionist experience wasn't done yet, since I forgot to do one last enemy in the bestiary. The Remoraz. It has an 8% chance to spawn in the Ice Cavern at floor B3. I spent about 30 minutes looking for it, but once I found it and killed it, it was added to the bestiary, giving me the Professional Field Research achievement. And since I've obtained all other achievements in the game, the Master of One achievement was given to me, getting the 24th and final achievement for Final Fantasy 1. With 10.5 hours spent, I've completed the first Final Fantasy game. And with 2.5 hours being dedicated for either the Remoraz or fighting the final boss, I can safely say that I could have beaten this game much quicker. If you've ever wanted to say that you've 100%ed a Final Fantasy game, I think this would be the easiest one to do. To put this game into a tier list, I'll put it in S tier, since by beating the game you are so close to getting completion already, and since there aren't any missable monsters or chests, I had 0 worries throughout this entire playthrough. Thank you for watching this video, cheers!